Welcome to Basic Black. Some of you are joining us on our broadcast, and others of you are joining us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar 89.7. Tonight, COVID-19 and minority business owners fighting for economic survival. We, like you, are dealing with the effects of the coronavirus pandemic and are taking precautions. We are working with a limited staff, and our guests are joining us remotely. The Paycheck Protection Plan, or PPP, was supposed to be a lifeline for small businesses struggling to survive during the COVID-19 crisis. But 90% of small businesses of color were left on the sidelines after the multi-billion-dollar stimulus funding was quickly gobbled up. Now, Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey is demanding an overhaul of the forgivable loan program. And this week, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley joined Senator Kamala Harris proposing a $124 million grant program targeted to micro businesses and especially small minority businesses. Two local minority business owners joined us in March, right after the shelter-at-home advisory. Tonight, an update on their status and a question. How can small businesses of color get their fair share in the economic recovery? Joining us, Betty Francisco, General Counsel of Compass Working Capital. She is also the co-founder of Amplify Latinx. Cassandria Campbell, co-founder and co-owner of Fresh Food Generation Catering. Erinn Danielle, owner of Simply Erinn's Hair Salon in Cambridge. She has 20 years experience in advanced hair care of healthy hair and scalp. And Segun Idowu, Executive Director of the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, BECMA. Welcome to all of you. I'm going to start with a little context. Today, we learned that the unemployment rate for Black workers jumped to 16.7%. That's nearly 3 times its level in February, before the coronavirus shutdowns took hold, and the highest since 2010. For Hispanic and Latino workers, the unemployment rate jumped to 18.9%, up from 6% in March, and the highest on record going back to the 1970s. Now, that's comparing to an overall employment rate of 14% for the nation and 42% jobless rate for white workers. So that's the context we're in, Betty Francisco. When I want to talk to you about why this Paycheck Protection Plan didn't work, particularly for Asian and Latino minority business owners, whom you say were facing, right off the bat, a language barrier.
That's correct. Many of them couldn't even understand the application process. In fact, there were none of the materials had been translated into these languages. It took deep outreach by community organizations to be able to explain the program, as well as educate these business owners as to what it could provide for them. The bigger issue, it was not just the language barrier, but also the cultural barriers, right? For both Asian and Latinos, the concept of a loan itself, just, having to go to a bank. Some of them are underbanked or don't have banking relationships. And taking a loan is just not something that they culturally are used to. So many of them don't want to have debt, never have had to use debt instruments. And so to promote that as the fix was irreprehensible for many of them, right? So I think, the program itself failed on a number of different levels, but in terms of providing, this fix for businesses, many of whom were so small, they couldn't take advantage of it because it was tied to payroll. And many of them are sole proprietors or self-employed, and they don't have traditional payroll.
Segun, BECMA has stepped up your inquiry, your demand on getting more data about where these loans went, because you know that 90% of businesses of color didn't get them, and you're trying to find out, well, where did they go? This is something that Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley has called for as well. Let's trace and see what happened along the way. But in the meantime, you said there is so much technical confusion, as Betty said, and you heard from a lot of the folks that you work with, the small businesses of color, that they were just leery of taking on any debt. They didn't understand it was a forgivable loan program.
Yeah, I mean, so Betty is absolutely correct. The cultural barriers that existed beyond even just the language barriers. I mean, particularly for the Black community, we faced a difficulty on two fronts. The first was our history, or the history of racist lending practices from banks. And how predatory lending, and how just recently that led to the Great Recession. But on the flip side, racist practices by banks of not lending to us to begin with when it comes to starting a business or getting a mortgage. And so this is, again, another reason why the Paycheck Protection Program failed, because we didn't have those relationships with banks to begin with to obtain those loans. So I think it was the Center for Responsible Lending that found not just that 90% of all minority businesses didn't get access to PPP, but that 95% of Black businesses did not get access to PPP. So that's one of the reasons that Betty and Amplify Latinx and BECMA and the Foundation for Business Equity and List Boston came together with dozens of other technical assistance providers to join forces with lending institutions to provide support, not just in filling out the application for PPP, but also connecting our members to banks that were willing to do business with them and make sure they got this money. And on the point about Congresswoman Presley on this push for data, we knew at the beginning of this that we weren't going to get access to this. Any minority business, we don't have a CFO, we don't have an accounting department. So we already were behind in making sure that we had the necessary paperwork and documents to obtain this needed relief. So we knew that was going to happen, but we know also that data is important in this country for making any substantive change happen. So we have been pushing for that and have been very, very proud of Congresswoman Presley for listening and responding to the needs of our business members. The legislation that was mentioned at the top of the program and that you mentioned, Callie, that she's introduced is a direct response to the advocacy efforts of Amplify Latinx and BECMA and the Initiative for Competitive Inner City and many others who are pushing to make sure that we're not only setting aside funds for businesses of color, technical assistance, but again, collecting this data so we know that the money is going to people who need it most.
Okay. Erinn, when we last spoke way back when, it seems like forever ago, you were nervous but not panicked. You had to shut down. That was all new. Your employees had to go. But you had a business coach. You were thinking carefully about how you were going to respond. And you said at that point you were going to apply for local funds in Cambridge that were available to small businesses like yourself. You did that. Now update us on where you are.
Okay, I had closed a week before the governor had said that mandated us to close because I was in fear for the team I have and the clients I have. And then we were to close. So I had suggested that they go on unemployment. The thing about the way I've done business is that I have a business coach. I file my taxes. I follow the business model the way it's been presented to me. It wasn't always that way. Had this been years ago, I would be in the same situation as my counterparts. So I applied for a grant in Cambridge. They had grants for people who lived in Cambridge or just worked in Cambridge, and I received funds from that. And that was just being a person who lived in Cambridge. And then for small businesses, they had grants up to $6,000 that they would give you if you applied. They made it pretty easy. The application was very easy. They got it out there, but you just had to be in the know because, again, I feel like Black people or minority people may not have known about this. So I had to share with other salon owners. A lot of them are sole proprietors, as Betty and Segun said, or 1099, so their business practices are different. I've received funds from the city. Cambridge is so good to their small businesses. And now they had said, as being part of the Small Business Advisory Board that they had asked me to be on, they've raised $3.6 million. And so whatever you didn't get of that 6,000, they are going to, I think it's up to 10,000 they're going to have, right? So you can get the difference. If you got 4, you can get 6, and they're going to make the applications very easy. And it is hard when there's a language barrier, or you're afraid, or you haven't done your taxes, or you haven't done them properly to ask for support and help, But I honestly, and I've even gotten the PPP. I didn't get it the first go round. I got it the second go round. So the fear there is like offering my team their job back, right? When what I'm paying them isn't as much as unemployment has given them, because they're giving them the extra 600 on top of whatever they're required to have. So that may be a bit much, but it's to get them off of unemployment, right? Mm-hmm. And start paying them even though they're home. But it gives me money to catch up on other bills that I need to catch up on. So I've been sharing with other people what's been going on with myself. And maybe I think that this will bring about different business practices for other small business owners to do things differently, so that you can get.
Hold on that for just a second, because I want to get back to that. Because before I move to Cassandria, thank you so much, Erinn. Betty, let me go back to you, because I'd like you to pick up on the people not knowing. This has been a concern of yours, that a lot of information just didn't get to the people that could have taken advantage of this.
That's right. So part of the initiative that Segun mentioned, which is called the Massachusetts PPP Equitable Access Initiative, was to do this, deep outreach to individual business owners, to educate them about the loan program, to explain the forgiveness piece, and to do it in their language. So, for example, I speak Spanish, and in many of the conversations, the immediate opening in Spanish, right? So it takes time to build trust with people. We're talking about, a financial product where they have to disclose their, income, they have to disclose sensitive information to you. Just the mere fact that I was calling in Spanish and identifying myself as someone trying to help them and get them information about this program they may have heard about was a huge way to build immediate trust, right? So they and many of these owners, one, they thanked us, even if the program was not right for them, right? Because you go through an evaluation to figure out, do you qualify for PPP? Can you calculate a loan amount that's even worth applying for, right? Because then you have to spend it in a certain way. And I will tell you, the way you have to spend it is so restrictive. And the time period you have to spend it in doesn't make any sense anymore, right? Yeah. Because we're past that. You have to spend it by June 30th. So this information piece in your language is so important, but it's hard to scale individual calls, right? So we've got to find a different way in the next round, or if there is a next round, to educate, communicate, and to do it through trusted community partners.
That brings me to you, Cassandria, because that's really right in your lane. When last we spoke to you in March, your business was on a trajectory upward. You'd had to shut down. You were quite nervous. You and your employees were filling out unemployment applications together, and you were going to apply for this, but you actually just didn't know what the future would bring. But one of the things that Betty has emphasized is the knowing of. You were in the thick of making sure that you kept up with knowing what was going on. So you were able to apply for PPP and you got it. Update us.
Yeah, we were one of the fortunate ones. And I would say that it was a crazy process because a lot of the bankers didn't know what was happening. And so they would provide us with information, and the federal government would then change that information, and we'd have to review the application. So it was a long 3 days of going through that process with our bank. And I still think that there's going to be challenges ahead of us. As everyone has alluded to, there are rules about the PP loan that can prevent it from being forgivable. So as a business owner, I'm nervous that we just took out a loan that is going to put the company in a position where we're now over leveraged if we can't meet all the guidelines that make our loan forgivable. We have been very fortunate that we've been engaging in emergency food relief. As a business, we fall under the umbrella of an essential business. And unfortunately, there is a lot of people who haven't received checks in weeks, and they're hungry. And so our team has been working to prepare cooked meals for people. We've been serving 3,000 meals per week to families in Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan, in partnership with Commonwealth Kitchen. And it's been good, and the PP program has allowed us to have some safety net in being able to pay our workers, but it doesn't really account for our industry. Um, we necessarily don't want everybody returning to work. Not everybody has the health and well-being to return to work and do emergency food relief. Also, we don't want to pack our kitchen.
Yeah.
So we need to hire less people. And if folks are going to come into work and do emergency food relief, we believe that they certainly deserve to get paid, hazard pay. So we've decided to, pay people significantly more to come in. And the PPP loan program doesn't reward businesses for that. In fact, it wants you to hire as many people as possible and pay them little so that you're still meeting your full-time equivalent. And right now, with social distancing and making sure people feel safe at work, it's really important that we pay them well, and that we're not crowding spaces at work.
One of the things that I think is important in your case to raise is that you possibly broke through because you were already doing what is right now what everybody's looking for: healthy food, the kinds of meals that can keep people together during a crisis situation. And certainly if there's food shortages, you want what they intake to be good. And that was the mark and the mission of your company. Cassandria?
Oh, I'm sorry, I lost you. Can you repeat that?
Yes, I said you were able to break through because you were already doing the work. The mission of your company was to provide healthy food, which is now very much needed in this moment. So that helped you, in some ways, get to the closer to the head of the line in terms of getting support.
Yes, it's a bittersweet experience. Right now, what we're seeing is a lot of the people who are most impacted by COVID-19 live in communities with high diabetes rates, high obesity rates, are frontline workers. And our business has been working and talking about these issues beforehand. I hope more people are going to understand just how important solving health disparities, especially diet-related disparities, is going to be to just everyone's general well-being in the future.
All right, back to you, Segun, because one of your big takeaways from this, really, it's a crisis, economic crisis and a health crisis, particularly for these small businesses of color, is that the way that business has been done for the micro businesses that Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley is trying to help is going to have to change. That, it's been cash, it's been very high touch. Some of the things that we may take for granted in other businesses, that's not been what businesses of color have offered. They've offered their expertise, but not in the 21st century manner, I guess. Talk to me about how that needs to change.
Yeah, I mean, one of the, I'll use Cassandria's word bittersweet aspects of this pandemic and this crisis is that it's giving our business members the ability to kind of retool their business, but also put together kind of, the things that unfortunately have fallen to the wayside because, what I often say, which is true, that at least for Black business owners, we are experts at the industry that we're in, at the business that we're in. So, from Cassandria's point of view, and this is not true of fresh food because they've got everything together, but, very good at preparing the food and making sure it's good and healthy and nourishing. But a lot of us spend so much time in the business we're in because we're sole proprietors that we don't have enough time to invest in the back office aspect of our business. And this includes things like bookkeeping and other accounting principles, things related to HR, et cetera. And so this crisis has really given us time to focus on that aspect of our business, which previous to COVID-19 is what kept a lot of us from obtaining opportunities, whether they be contracts, or loans or other grant funds that were out there. So, one of the things that we're doing as an organization, and again, in partnership with groups like Amplify and others, are working with our business members to think through how they can, the word of the year is now pivot, but how they can pivot their business after this pandemic to making sure that they're a bit more modern, online, et cetera, but also preparing for the next disaster. That's going to be the key thing as well. This is not the last time that we'll be dealing either with COVID-19 or any other emergency in the future.
Do you worry, and this, I want to put the same question to Betty Francisco, that there will be a permanent wipeout of some small businesses of color who just can't navigate coming back because they didn't get the support on any of these rounds of funding, and they didn't have something of what you're talking about now to be able to prepare them to operate in this 21st century economy? Segun?
Yes, this is a reason why we joined the Black Boston COVID-19 Coalition, being led by the Black Economic Justice Institute, because there is a concern. And one of the things they've been saying is that if we're hearing that 25% of businesses overall, small businesses overall, will be wiped out, the concern is that that will actually be 50% in the Black community. But that's it only if we don't take the measures that Amplify and Becma and others have been pushing for, which is a separate fund for a grant fund for minority-owned businesses to ensure that we're getting people the relief that they need, particularly for businesses that are represented here today. Industries or like hair care, personal care, food services. These are going to be the industries that suffer for a really long time, even post-COVID, as it were, because even if the governor were to lift the stay-at-home advisory tomorrow, people are not going to feel comfortable being in large places or even in spaces where we are for our social gatherings. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of all of our businesses as much as we can to prevent the elimination of whole community economies.
Betty?
Yeah, we understand that there will be businesses that don't survive, right? It could be up to 50%. In the Great Recession of 2008, in fact, that's about what it was, right? A lot of businesses of color went under. However, there's data showing that those were the businesses that came back stronger, and were in fact critical to the to the relief and to the recovery, to the rebuilding of the economy. And we know that many of our Black and Latino businesses, right, are in industries that will be critical. For example, who takes care of our children, right? Childcare is going to be such a fundamental service to come back, right? So that families have someone to take care of their kids. There's so many providers that are Latino, African American, that run home daycares or daycare centers. And so that's going to be an essential service that needs to come back incredibly strong. Who does our food, right? Who grows our food, in hospitality, et cetera. These are the industries where our Black and Brown communities mostly operate in. They will be part of and critical to the recovery. So while we know many won't survive, I'm optimistic that they are essential to the recovery. And so the inputs we need to make, right, is one, to advocate for large amounts of relief in the form of capital, flexible capital, as Segun said. Grants are really important, and grants that are not just, to get the businesses back up and running, but to do the kind of what we call digital or tech transformation that is going to be so important for them to sustain in the future, right? Because what we're seeing, as Segun said, and in all the technical assistance we're providing, is that the businesses were never set up correctly. Many of them said, I never had the chance to talk to anybody about how to set myself up. I don't know all the tools, right? And it's generational. So if you're a millennial business owner, you will know and will have access to a lot of technology tools because they're so native. But for an older entrepreneur, business owner, they need support, right? They're going to need implementation help. And that's where our service organizations will play a significant role, but they need funding as well, right? So TA providers are now saying we also need to transform ourselves to be able to do the technical assistance necessary to get these businesses into, say, the 21st century, right? So they're taking advantage of the whole suite of tools that are currently available to our, our, say, venture-backed startups. Why there's no reason why our smaller businesses can't get access to all of those things too.
Well, in fact, Erinn, you've already pivoted. You've been pivoting. You're looking forward, even without opening, in terms of the future of your business, because we're going to need hair care too, for sure. So nobody's giving that up. So you've been doing visual consultations, looking forward, trying to think about how to re-envision an opening when it comes, which will be rather quickly in Massachusetts. In addition to that, would you talk about the partnership between the barbers and stylists and trying to help each other and to look forward to prepare for the opening?
Well, the partnership we've been on, of course, social media. They've created barbers and cosmetology, barber and stylist think tank where we're trying to figure out together. I just joined them a little while ago. What are going to be the regulations for opening? Or what would we like? You know, because we have to wait for the governor, of course, but what we would like. So we're all coming together. There's a lot of free classes. People are sharing information. People are sharing business information, like how can we be different and do things differently? Like you say, get a bookkeeper, you know, do your taxes, keep inventory, how you're going to hire people. Also,
And what are you going to do specifically when you open that's different?
That's different. I think more consultations like I'm doing now. Like I really have not been sitting still. I've been doing virtual consultations through Facebook, through the phone, over the phone. I've been delivering hair care products, which is contact free. I've been delivering products. I do curbside pickup for products. So I've really been bringing in a little bit of income, but staying super busy. The salon is a complete mess in a way because I've got inventory everywhere. I've been mailing stuff out of state to clients who want products and information on how to care for their hair.
So you're ready. You've been looking forward.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to opening if it's safe, like, you know, thinking of thermometers, temperature and things like that. Like, but we have to have resources.
Right. And I got to leave it there because I have to leave it there right now. And I thank you all for joining me.
Thank you.
That's the end of our broadcast, the end of our show, and I want to thank all my guests for joining me. I ask you to stay with us because we're going to continue this conversation on Facebook and Twitter.